Hello, this is Chuck Ridgway, Automation Technology Manager at Horner. Thanks for joining us for another Tuesday live stream. Well, I think we have an interesting topic for you today. Here it is. Capture video stills for machine security. That's right, today we're going to show you how to take advantage of some of the built-in features in the Horner OCS to improve your machine security. And this is especially useful if your machine might happen to be installed in a remote location. But it also can be useful in a factory environment. I think we have a couple of examples during the program today which will illustrate that. All right, without further ado, let's break down today's topic. We're going to start by answering the question, what do we mean by machine security today? And why should we be concerned about it? And then the features we're going to be highlighting today from the Horner OCS all-in-one controller are showing you how to connect a camera, how to capture a still image, and how to send that image as an email notification. Some nifty features that are built right into most Horner OCS controllers, and we're going to show you how to do that to accomplish this particular goal today. And don't worry, there's going to be plenty of demonstrations. Here we go. Okay, so what do we mean by machine security? Well, normally as control engineers, when we're thinking about PLCs and security issues, we're thinking about, for instance, keeping personnel out of harm's way using safety equipment, like safety gates and those sorts of things. We could be talking about making sure that our programs are password protected so that the intellectual property of our machine, the logic that we've programmed into it, is protected so it can't be stolen or uploaded without authorization, those sorts of things. Or we could be talking about protecting our machine so that it can't be accessed remotely over a network or an internet type connection. Maybe by adding one of those internet appliances or what have you. But today we're not focusing on any of those security issues. What we're focusing on today are physical machine security. So why should we focus on physical machine security? Well, there's plenty of automated machinery out there, whether it's remotely located or even in a factory, but a lot that's used outside the factory. And this equipment really should be secured for a variety of reasons. A couple of the obvious ones are public safety. We don't want, someone from the public to kind of get themselves in the way of this automated equipment and potentially, cause some harm to themselves. We also don't want anyone who has malicious intent basically to have access to the machine or to do some damage or, some sort of sabotage. That's obviously not desired either. So these are a couple of obvious reasons why we should be securing our remote equipment especially. And we've got some other reasons for you to maybe take advantage of securing your factory equipment as well. We'll talk about a little bit later. Okay, but what we're talking about today is really just one part of an overall security strategy. It's not the entire security strategy, but just one part of it. And it takes advantage of some of the built-in features that are in the Horner OCS that are relatively inexpensive to implement. Okay, so really what we're going to be talking about today is showing you how you can connect a USB camera to the Horner OCS, how you can detect an event. Now, we're not going to focus a lot on the actual event detection because there's a variety of different types of events that we might want to detect. We'll talk about what those events might be, but we're not going to show you all the different steps to detect them. In some cases, it's just a matter of a sensor turning on or something. The next step is we're going to show you how to capture a still image from your video camera and then email that image as a notification. So that's really what our topic is covering today. And we're focusing today on the Canvas series of Horner all-in-one controllers. Okay, so let's start with step number one, which is connecting a USB camera. So basically the Prime series and the Canvas series and a few of the other products in the Horner product line as well do support UVC video, which effectively is the type of video that is supported or generated by USB webcams, for instance. But there are plenty of USB cameras that aren't just webcams. And I've got an example of one on the screen there, which is kind of a security camera that has a USB interface. And once again, we're going to be focusing today on how to do this workflow, if you will, in the Canvas series. Now, USB cameras will connect to the Horner OCS through the USB-A port, which is the host port, and the camera can be connected directly to the USB-A port, or it could be connected through a hub. And you can have up to 4 cameras connected to a Horner OCS, cameras 1 through 4, if you use a hub. Now, one thing to keep in mind, the way the cameras will be numbered, 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the Horner OCS from the standpoint of your control program will depend effectively on the order in which they power up. So you're going to want to put them in a specific order in the hub so that they consistently will power up as the same camera. So you may have to pay a little bit of attention to which cameras are coming up first so you can get the numbering right. Okay, so what do we need to do besides physically connect the camera to the USB port on the Horner controller? Well, inside the user interface configuration area, when you're configuring a screen, and in Cscape 10, you configure your screen from a screen tab, but inside that project toolbox when you're editing a screen is the live graphics data area in the toolbox, and there is a video object. You click on that video object, and then you can drag and size a screen where video will be displayed in real time at runtime. And then you have the ability, of course, to configure that dialog box. And here I have on the screen all the different things that you can configure. Now let me hit the highlights here. We have 2 different ways we can use the video object. We can use the video object to play back pre-recorded files, like for help files. That's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about streaming live video. So we need to make sure that in the upper left-hand corner, we select stream. We need to enter the channel number or the camera number for the camera we're displaying. Now, if we only have one camera, at the top there under enter channel number, we're just gonna put a constant of 1 because it's gonna be camera number 1 that's connected. Okay, if we have multiple cameras, then that would either need to be a constant of 1, 2, 3, or 4, depending on the camera that's displayed there, or maybe a variable where we change the camera number through that variable. We've also got a trigger variable, which is a Boolean array of bits, and even though on the screen in the Cscape dialog, at least for 10.1 Service Pack 1, it shows that you have 8 consecutive Boolean bits in an array, the reality is you need to configure that for 16. Okay, so that's a little bit of a mistake in the Cscape dialog. So make sure in your trigger control array that you set that for a length of 16 when you configure that variable. And really, it's only the first bit that you're going to care about, and that is the first member of that array, the first bit, which is used to start and stop the video stream coming from the camera. Also available to you is to assign a status register to this particular video dialog, where you can see whether the video is playing properly, whether the OCS didn't find a camera. Okay, maybe you selected the wrong camera number or no camera number at all, and that variable might have a value of 0, for instance. Or maybe if for whatever reason you've got a camera that does not support or that is putting out a frame rate that's unsupported. Now, my experience is nearly all the time for nearly every USB camera I've ever connected, no matter what its resolution is, it always has its resolution adjusted or its frame rate and resolution adjusted to a compatible setting that the OCS can display. So I've never really seen a problem there, but if you see a value of 64 in that status register, it's going to mean that for whatever reason, that particular camera is putting out an unsupported frame rate. Okay? And then finally, the video object at runtime has a escape button or a back arrow associated with it, and you can set that escape button to act as a true escape so that effectively you could back up to a previous screen from that video object, or you could use it as a screen jump so that you would jump to a particular screen when you press that particular arrow in the upper right-hand corner of the video object. And then finally, you have the ability to display your video as either a 16:9 aspect ratio or a 4:3 aspect ratio. Probably most cameras these days are going to be 16:9, so I would assume that by default. Okay, so that's the configuration of the video object that you would put on a screen. Now, why would you need to put a video object on the screen? Well, you need to have somewhere for that video to be displayed, okay, because later what we're going to do is capture that video and we need to have a place for it to be displayed on the screen before we can do a screen capture to actually capture the video. So that is what we'll need to do in a future step. Now, step number 2 is to detect an event, right? And this is the one where I said we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about how to detect an event. We're going to talk about the different events we might want to detect. So when might we want to have a screen capture happen? When would that be? What events are we talking about? Well, maybe when a safety gate opens, okay, somebody unplugs a safety gate. Maybe we just want to automatically do a capture of the video camera showing that area of the machine. Okay, so we can see, okay, who is opening the safety gate? Is it someone from the public? Is it somebody authorized? We just have a record of that. Maybe we have a camera pointed at, the machine area, and we want to just take a simple screenshot whenever an operator logs in or attempts to log in from the touchscreen. And maybe they're not really an operator, just somebody pressing buttons. So we might decide, hey, as a matter of course, let's take a screen capture from that video camera so we have a record of who that was, or at least if it was an apparently authorized person or not. Maybe another situation is if somebody walks up to the touchscreen after hours and presses the button, maybe we want to have a screen capture or a video capture at that point. Okay, so again, we have a record of who that was. And maybe if we have a specific motion detection after hours, that might be another scenario where we take a screen capture of our video camera. So these are all events that are easy to detect using the right sensor or just using the right situation or a little bit of logic in your program. None of these are difficult. As an example, for detecting a touchscreen press, there are system registers which show you the coordinates that are currently being pressed on the touchscreen. So if somebody just walks up and starts pressing buttons or trying to press the screen or anything, those variables are going to show up with values, and maybe it's midnight or something and the machine shouldn't be running right now, and maybe that's the time where you want to take a screen capture. That's just an example of one of the events you might detect in logic, and then that could cause you to do a screen capture of the video signal. Okay, so step 2, we detect the event. Step 3, all right, so in step 1, we got the camera going. We programmed a video object on one of the screens. Okay, in step 2, we've got an event we're going to come up with that's going to cause us to want to do a video still image capture. Step 3 is we have to set up the capture capability so that we can make that happen. So how do we do that? Well, in Cscape 10, you go to the Project Navigator section of Cscape, okay, and under User Interface, as long as you have a screen being displayed on a screen tab. Okay, so again, you have to have a screen being displayed on a screen tab, but if that's happening, right-click under User Interface, and then select through the configuration area, the screen capture option, and then the screen capture dialog pops up. And really, that's pretty simple. What do you need to do to configure that particular feature? Well, you assign a Boolean type variable that's going to trigger the screen capture to occur, and then you're going to assign a file name for the name of the file that you're capturing. Now, if you want the file name to be different every time you do a capture, which is probably what we want nearly all the time, well, then we're going to use some sort of wildcards in the file name. Now let's take a look at that file name that I've put on the screen for that particular example. The first part of that file name is actually the path where I'm going to be storing the files. And you can see it's called captures with a slash behind it. So there's a captures folder that we're going to be putting all the screen captures in. And then what's after that is actually the file name using a series of wildcards. And in my example, I decided to use the file name being built through the current hour, 2-digit, the current minute, 2-digit, and then basically a dash, and then I'm using what's called a file counter that's going to count from 0 to 99 because I've chosen a 2-digit file counter. And it's going to be just like when you take pictures with your digital camera or with your phone, the file names are going to be incremented automatically. So what I'm going to end up with is a JPEG file. You can see I've got JPEG selected that has the hour, the minute, 2 digits each, and then a 2-digit 00 to 99 as an incrementing file counter, if you will. So that'll ensure that I have unique names for all the images that I capture so they don't just overwrite each other. Okay, so that's basically what I've shown here. All right, now, if you want to take advantage of the file name counter, okay, here I'm showing you how to access that as well. So once again, you go to the project navigator, making sure that you've got a screen that's being displayed to be edited somewhere in Cscape with an active screen tab. You right click on user interface, and going through that same configure menu, you select file counters. And then boom, the bigger dialog box pops up, and you can see you've got 4 file counters that you can use. And you can configure maximums. They're up to double integer each. So you can obviously count to a really large number, much bigger than the 99 that I configured mine for. Okay, so that's a couple ways to build your file name for the screen captures that you're going to be performing. Now keep in mind, these are screen captures that we're doing. Again, that's the reason why we had a video object placed on a screen, because we need to capture that screen, including the video image that's on it. Okay, now in step 4, what we're going to do is we're going to email the image. Okay, so we're going to take advantage of emailing as a notification to some personnel to let them know that we've got a situation where we're emailing the image of who logged in, or who, you know, or maybe again an after hours break-in or something to that effect. Now, keep in mind, not every time you capture the screen, not every time you capture a video still, do you necessarily need to email it. You know, maybe if you're doing it on a kind of every time somebody logs in, you want to capture that image, doesn't necessarily mean you have to email it every time, okay? But there are, of course, situations in which you'd want to do that. Now, I'm not going to go through all the different steps for setting up email on the Horner OCS. We've got a great video that gives you step-by-step how to do that. So reference that for all the complete information. But today I am going to talk about how you can make sure you have the appropriate attachment to an email so that you send that image. And basically, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be going to the email configuration. Again, I'm not going to show you every step for setting up email, but you're going to go to email configuration, and then you're going to navigate down to the outgoing messages area. You're going to add a new message, and then you're going to configure a message or create a message that basically is a notification that, hey, something has occurred and we've got a still image attached to this email that is showing you a still from the video camera. So on the next screen, I'm giving you all the details on how to set up that specific email with the file attachment. Okay, so you can see here all the details with this particular dialog. The key is at the bottom, or at least the key in terms of attaching the file is at the bottom. All right, so there's a checkbox there that says attach file. Okay, in the lower left-hand corner, you can see I've highlighted it there. And then you specify what file do you want to attach. And you've got a drop down of several different options. The easiest one is going to be to select the latest file. In other words, in the directory or the file path that's specified there below, you can specify, I want to send the latest file as an attachment. That way you don't have to worry about the file name. You just know it's the newest one that you've copied to that directory. That's by far the easiest way to do that. Now you can also, if you were to type in a specific file name and every file name is the same or what have you, you could do that as well by specifying a specific file name. But if you do that, you can't use wildcards. So I wouldn't really recommend that particular approach. Generally, the easiest way to do this is with the latest file. And maybe if you're, going to be capturing more than one file, you might even want to use the latest file and then the one previous to latest, and send 2 successive emails, maybe with different time delays in between the captures, that sort of thing. So you've got some options for setup here. Okay, and then you are going to need some logic. Okay, why am I going to need some logic? Well, because you've got a sequence that you want to follow. All right, if you're going to basically go through this process that ends in an email with an image attached, there's a series of steps that need to happen. It's not difficult logic, but it needs to be done. You need to detect your event whatever that might be. Maybe it's as simple as a sensor turning on, but basically you're going to have some logic to detect your event. Once you've detected your event, you're going to trigger your camera. Okay, so you make sure the camera is on, and then you're going to switch automatically in logic to the screen that has the video object on it. That gets basically the video that's playing through the camera on a screen. Okay, then you're going to trigger your screen capture bit. Now notice if you look at my logic there on the screen, there is a little bit of a delay. Okay, I've got a 2-second delay there, I believe, from the time I turned on the camera and switched screens to the time I did the screen capture. So I want to give it a couple of seconds to make sure that the image is on the screen, and then I'm going to capture it. Okay, if I have multiple images I want to capture, maybe through some sort of delay, I would then delay and then trigger another screen capture. And then I would switch back to my home screen and turn off the camera trigger. Okay, and then when that's complete, I would go ahead and trigger the email. Now, one thing I want to let you know about these trigger bits. Let's first talk about the trigger bit for triggering the screen capture. Okay, when you trigger a screen capture, you turn that screen capture trigger on in your program, and then the OCS firmware will turn it off for you. Okay? Same thing with the email trigger. You'll turn that email trigger on, and then the OCS firmware will turn it off for you when that email send is complete. Okay? All right, so that's really what we're looking at here, the process that we need to program. All right, let's go ahead and dive right into the demonstration and show you the example program I created for you and how it all works. Okay, here is my example program in Cscape for today's application. Let's just kind of go through it step by step. Okay, so the first step was connecting a USB camera and configuring a video object. Okay, so I've got a screen here that I've created. Okay, let me pull it up now. Okay, and the key part of the screen is this video object here, which a majority of the screen is the actual video object itself, because I want as large as possible of the image on the screen here. Now I'm dealing with a 7-inch unit. Basically, if you have a 10-inch unit, you can have a larger display. Obviously, if you have a smaller unit, you're going to have a smaller image here. Okay, so this is our video object. If you remember correctly, I told you that it was here under basically live graphic data under video. So I click here, drag and size it when I configure it. The key things here are, I just have one camera, so I just hard coded in my camera number. I set it to stream because that's what we're doing here. I've assigned a trigger variable. It's important that this is a Boolean array of 16 or larger. Okay, 16 is what you need to use. This is a mistake. It should be 16, not 8. Okay, however, it's only the first bit I care about. That's the only one I'll use in my program, but again, we're referencing a 16-bit array here. I've got a word type status register that I can monitor that tells me everything's working or not. We talked about that before. I'm using a 16:9 aspect ratio, which is common, and I'm simulating Cscape on the screen. So there is a back arrow, if you will, on the video object at runtime. When I press that back arrow, what will happen? Well, in my case, it's going to simulate an escape. So any jump button that is jumping to this screen, I could then escape back to, as long as the jump button on the other screen was configured properly to support an escape to return. Or I could just use this like a regular jump button and configure a screen number here to jump to every time. Okay, then the other things I've done in this screen are I have put the time and the date here, okay? So that I have yet another record in my screen capture of what time and date this was captured. Of course, I could also use the time and date of the file that was created when I do the screen capture, but I think it's better to have time and date on here since it fits anyway. We might as well go ahead and do it. And then I did put an escape key up here so I could escape back to my home page in this case, okay? All right, so this is creating the video screen that ultimately will be where my screen capture of my video still comes from. Okay, that was step one. Okay, step 2 was to detect an event. So that's where I would have logic here somewhere in my program that would detect that an event had occurred. But in this case, I'm just doing it manually to simulate the event happening, so I don't have any logic for that. Okay, next is step 3, which is capturing a still image. All right, let's do that next. Okay, so remember, to capture a still image, we have to configure the screen capture feature. Now, if I right click here on user interface and I go to configure, you'll see, oh, wait a minute, my screen capture isn't configurable. How come? Well, that's because my currently opened tab is a logic tab, not a screen tab, okay? So if I go to a screen tab and have that open, when I go back to user interface, right click and hit configure, then I've got all the options there and I can pull up screen capture. And you can see it's very simple. In my case, I just have a single bit. That's a Boolean type variable that I'm going to trigger to cause the screen capture to occur. And then, like I showed you in the slides, I've chosen a file name that includes hours, minutes, and the screen counter. Okay, now JPEG is what you want to use for this. Okay, currently, for whatever reason, with 10.1 Service Pack 1 and 17.2 firmware in the canvas, for whatever reason, bitmap files and PNG files are not successfully being attached. So you'll need to use JPEG files for this. Not a big deal, but something that's important to know. Okay, so that's the configuration for the screen capture. Okay, the next step then is to set up an email that will take that image and send it off to the desired recipient. So for that, we're going up here to the messaging area. Remember, we're in the home tab here. Going to the messaging area and selecting email, and then going outgoing messages. And then typically we would add a new message, okay, if we haven't done that before. But in this case, I've already actually got a message for the intrusion. So let's take a look at it. Okay, so this is who I want to email it to, the email group. So there's one or more email messages that this will go to. Okay, here's the subject as well as the contents. I could add real-time data if I wanted to do that, okay, but I'm not going to in this example. And then this is where I attach the file along with my path. Now, if I wanted this saved to USB, if I had a USB drive plugged in, let's say to a USB hub along with a camera, then I might have a B path here, but I would recommend using microSD. And in this case, I just have a folder specified or a path specified, which is a captures directory. And I'm going to attach the latest file in that directory. Okay, and here's are all the different choices or some of the choices that show up without scrolling down through the list. Okay, and latest file is almost always going to be your easiest configuration. Okay, so that is what we need to do in terms of the 4 different steps. The last important step is you need some logic to make all this happen. And this is basically what I have. So here's my procedure, okay, spelled out in my documentation. Always important to document your logic. Okay, and then I've just set up some simple logic where I've got a series of bits, which are an array of bits that I call capture step from 0 to 15, because I've allocated, I believe, up to 16 steps. Okay, and basically what I'm doing here is I'm starting by when my event is detected, I'm turning on a one-shot so that this process gets started and executed only once. And that's when my event occurs. Now, in my case, I've got a button on my screen as a demo that I'm using instead. Okay, so I start the capture process. I turn on my camera trigger. I switch to the screen that has my video object on it. I wait a couple of seconds. After that happens, I turn on my screen capture bit. After another second, I do another screen capture because in my example, I'm doing 2 frames captured a second apart. Okay, remember, I turn this bit on and the OCS firmware turns it off for me. That's why it's a set. And when I do my second screen capture, same thing. I turn this bit on and the OCS firmware turns it off for me. Okay, and then when that's done, after a second or so later, basically I switch back to my home screen. I turn off my camera trigger, okay, and then I turn on my trigger email, the bit that triggers that particular intrusion email. And again, like the other trigger bit, I turn it on and the OCS firmware will turn it off. Okay, so that's the logic for making all this happen in Cscape. Let's take a look at what happens on the bench. All right, here we are on the bench with my example program that I showed you in Cscape. All right, I've got my camera connected here to the USB port. All right, and I also, of course, could have it connected through a hub, but I'm not using a hub in this particular case. All right, so I can go ahead and go to the security camera area. You can see this is where I have my video screen. Now you'll notice that there's no video playing right now because the camera is not triggered. So I'm going to go ahead and trigger it now. You'll notice it takes a couple of seconds, hi there, for it to trigger, okay? So that's my video screen. That's what's going to be triggered, or that's what the image that's going to be triggered when we actually go through that process I showed you in Logic. All right, now also in this example are kind of the standard dialog boxes that I used in that email video that I highlighted earlier on the slides. So this is kind of the standard stuff for the email and the LAN setup. You can see here there are multiple screens available for setting up your email addresses and testing them and those sorts of things. All the details on this are in that video that I talked about before. Okay, so let's say that we have a disturbance or some sort of event that we want to capture. Okay, you would have logic in your program that detects that event. In my case, I've just got a button for doing a screen capture. So let's go ahead and initiate that process now. You can see that we switch screens. The video turned on within about a second or so. And before you know it, that process was complete. It only took a few seconds to complete. And then part of that process should also be sending off an email. So let's see if the email got through. And there it is. Okay, let's go ahead and highlight that. And there we go. An intrusion was detected. Attached is a still photo at the time of the intrusion. Let's take a look at the image. Oh my goodness, look at that. All right, so our process worked just as we prescribed it to. So we detected an event, and then when that event was detected, in my case, just a push button, we're able to capture a still from the video camera and send it off to the appropriate person. Okay, that does it for our topic for today. Don't miss an opportunity to participate in our case study program. If you submit a case study to our marketing team and it details your recent application, maybe using an Excel Prime, a Canvas, or OCS.io, then as long as everything goes as it should, you'll get a free controller for your trouble. So contact marketing today and find out how you can participate in this great program. Okay, last chance to sign up for advanced training next week. We've got plenty of open slots and we're looking for some more students. And keep in mind, if you can make it for advanced training, you'll get 50% off a controller as part of the perks for the course. Okay, so definitely something to consider. In the second and third quarter of this year, we've got lots of trade shows that are going to be happening. Okay, you can see them there on the screen. Most of them are in the Midwest, but we've also got an event in Houston coming up in September. Okay, lots of ways to interact with Horner Automation online, including our website, our YouTube channel, and on LinkedIn. Now, next week, we're going to be covering Modbus RTU setup and troubleshooting, where the Horner OCS all-in-one controller is a master. And when we're talking RTU, we're talking about serial communications. Why serial in this modern age of Ethernet? Well, because there are tons of devices that are available with a Modbus serial connection, including a lot of drives which have it built in for free. So we want to show you how to set up Modbus RTU and how to troubleshoot it. Okay, if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, don't hesitate to do so. It doesn't cost anything. And if you choose notifications when you subscribe, you'll be notified every time we go live or every time we post a new video. Okay, so until next week when we talk about RTU Modbus, let's get out there and do some good.